One of the interesting chapters in Tanya is chapter Chai, chapter 18, because he speaks about a quality that we all have inside us that is related deeply to our parsha. And the mission of the Alter Rebbe in Tanya is one thing. Tanya, the very famous book, the Tanya comes to explain how Judaism and keeping Torah and Mitzvot is something that is close to us. Now, why should it be close? If we take a look at other religions, or at not only other religions, but any acquired behavior, any acquired knowledge, any acquired wealth, possessions, whatever it is, we don't say that it's close, right? It's not easy. Close means that it's easy. We don't say that it's easy. Someone will tell you, you know what, you're going to go study law, for example, right? And they'll say, yes, it's close to you. Law is close to you. No, it's not that close. It takes, what, 4 years, 5 years, and then you've got to do internship. It's not that easy. And that's not only about law, but again, we would think that connecting to Hashem is something far away. Why? Because we know in our own personal lives, very often we face challenges, and the world that we live in isn't an easy world. Even getting along in a civil way, like anyone else, that's already hard. So being able to also connect to Hashem in this world, isn't that something that's far from us? The Pasuk says in Chumash Devarim, and this is connected to Moshe in his late years, after he took Am Yisrael out of Egypt, after he took them through the desert for 40 years, and he's about to bring them into Eretz Yisrael, and he knows that he's not going to enter the land, but he tells them, Ki karov eilecha hadavar me'od beficha ubilvavcha la'asoto. It's in one term that it says, the Pasuk says, that hadavar, this thing, is very close to you. It doesn't say just it's close, karov. It says me'od, karov me'od. Very close. Ki karov elecha hadavar me'od. Which means that Judaism is very close to us. How could that be? How could that be? Or in the words of the Alter Rebbe says, Zeneged hachush shelanu. What does that mean? It's against our own senses. We know that it's not so close. So how come Moshe Rabbeinu says that it's close? Here's another pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu says. And Moshe Rabbeinu mentions that V'ata Yisrael, now Am Yisrael, Ma Hashem Elokecha shoel mimach. What is Hashem requesting from you? Again, Moshe Rabbeinu is encouraging Am Yisrael before he sets them through straight into Eretz Yisrael. He tells them, listen, what is Hashem asking from you? Just to fear Him, that's all. V'ata Yisrael, ma Hashem Elokecha shoel mimach, ki im liyirat Hashem. Just fear Hashem. What's it? Why is Moshe Rabbeinu acting in such a way and telling us that it's so simple and so easy? It's not that easy. Yeah, fearing Hashem, I don't really know many people that actually fear Hashem. Sometimes people might fear punishments, and even that today is something that many people don't fear, the punishment. But we don't fear Hashem. In Tanya it speaks about two parts of fearing Hashem. There's fearing Hashem, the punishment, and there's fearing Hashem, what's called His greatness, the greatness of Hashem. That's a different level entirely. That's someone that actually can appreciate, and can, he also doesn't only appreciate, but he knows Hashem. He knows Hashem very well, and he's able to say, you know what, it's like a king that I know very well. It's not only a king that I'm afraid that the king might do something to me, but it's actually a king that I appreciate, that I know him, that I know how great he is, and therefore I fear him. Right? So, to sum up the question in simple words, why does Moshe Rabbeinu say that Judaism is close to us? It seems that it's not close to us. And this is where there's an interesting story about one rabbi he started off as a young yeshiva bocher in Poland, right at the beginning of the Second World War. He was lucky because what happened in the beginning of the Second World War is that the Soviet Union and the Germans, they split Poland between themselves. And the Germans had one part, and the Soviets had the other part. And a lot of the yeshiva bochrim, where did they want to belong to? Which side? The German side. Why? Because the Soviets, they knew they can't keep Torah and mitzvahs over there. The Soviets were all against any type of religion. They knew, and that's what happened in places like Vilna and in all of Poland. What happened was, first thing is that they closed the shuls, they closed the yeshivas, no more learning. And of course, they didn't know about the plans of the Germans. This group of yeshiva students ended up on the eastern side of Poland. Not only that, they were sent to Siberia. And they didn't know, but with that, their lives were saved. While they spent time in Siberia, they all belonged to a kolkhoz. A kolkhoz is basically a city or a unit of a town or something like that, where they had to work in that place, and working would mean that you have food. Without work, you wouldn't have what to eat, because they didn't pay money in the Soviet Union. There was no such a thing as money. There was certificates where the people used to receive a piece of paper that had said this person deserves 80 grams or 200 grams of bread a day and a bowl of soup. And that's how everyone lived. So, unbelievable. That was
cold, like 16 minus and things like that.
Right. Difficult times. And they thought that they were suffering, but they were saved in that way. This rabbi, then he was a young student, he was sent to this kolkhoz, and he had the opportunity that there was a farmer, a Jewish farmer, or actually he was a baker at that point, and he used to sleep at his house. And at least he had a house to sleep, a roof. It was warm, because outside in Siberia it's minus 40 degrees. But he didn't have no work because he was new. And that's why he survived on whatever he could find, but not much. One day this baker comes home and he's very happy, and he tells him, "You won't believe it, I saved your life." "What happened? How did you save my life?" "Well, I found you a job in the bakery together with me. One of my friends left, and I made sure that you'll come in and you'll join me." So he expected him to be very happy, but he tells him, "Listen, I can't do it. It's 7 days of work." "What do you mean it's 7 days of work? We all work every single day." In the Soviet Union, there was no days off. There was no days off. Not a Shabbos, not a vacation, not a 2-week vacation, nothing. And he said, "What is this? What? You're not prepared to work, to put in some effort for the sake of all the public?" You know, that was their mindset then. So he said, "I'm chasing you out of my house. You can't stay in my house. If you're not prepared to work, you can't stay in the house." And of course, he said, "It's Shabbos. I don't work on Shabbos." And he was sent out of the house, and he was thinking to himself, what is he going to do? It's minus 40 degrees, and the night comes, and he doesn't know. He can freeze, and that's no joke. You know, if you've ever been to extreme cold weather, it's not pleasant staying outside. And he ended up, he found the dog's kennel, and he was able to sleep there, and that's how he spent a few weeks until he was able to find a job that he could skip Shabbos. There's many stories about people how they were able to actually skip Shabbos. They used to do certain deals. They used to work double. Now the problem was, when you work double, is that the supervisor sees that, oh, you can do double in one day. From now onwards, every day you have to bring double because you can work this hard. In the Soviet Union, you had to work your maximum, and if you wouldn't work your maximum, so they would say you're trying to cause damage to the union, to the people. So it was always a challenge. But, and they asked him afterwards, his friends, they told him, well, why, how could you do this? How can you sacrifice yourself? So he says, one word, you cannot do otherwise. Can't be otherwise. Wow, this is an answer, which means he's not explaining why he does it, but he's just stating, you know what? It cannot be otherwise. I cannot disobey Hashem's mitzvahs. It's a very interesting reply, and this is the key to the neshama. This is the key that he speaks about in chapter 18, talking about the Yerusha, the heritage that we all have. We all have a special heritage coming from Avraham Avinu, our forefathers. They made sure that each and every one of us have the special neshama, the special soul that actually gives us life, and not only life, but lights us with the ways of Hashem. Let's go back to a famous Gemara. The Gemara asks, and the Gemara says, how can Moshe Rabbeinu say to Am Yisrael, you know what, Am Yisrael, fear Hashem. What is Hashem asking from you? Just fear. And the Gemara says, Atu Yira Milta Zutrasahi, which in Aramaic means, is fear something so small that Moshe is requesting it from Am Yisrael? And the Gemara brings this answer. And listen to this, because automatically you should all have a question. The Gemara says, yes, fearing Hashem is something very easy and very simple for Moshe Rabbeinu. In the words of the Gemara, Legabe Moshe Milta Zutrasahi. For Moshe Rabbeinu, this is something easy, something simple. What is the question? Does this make sense? The pasuk talks about Am Yisrael, not about Moshe Rabbeinu. It's Moshe Rabbeinu telling Am Yisrael, all Hashem's requesting is fear Him. And we say, well, how is that possible? Is that something simple? Yes, for Moshe Rabbeinu it's something simple. But you're telling Am Yisrael to do it. We're not asking Moshe Rabbeinu. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu is perfect. But what about Am Yisrael? What does the pasuk say in the words of the pasuk? Ve'ata Yisrael, ma Hashem Elokecha she'el mimach. Am Yisrael, what is Hashem requesting from you? This is the question of the Alter Rebbe in other places in Tanya. And this also leads us to the point of the neshama. This is the story of the neshama. The story of the neshama is that each and every one of us have what's called a small Moshe Rabbeinu inside us. And when the Gemara refers to Moshe, he's not referring to the great Moshe Rabbeinu. He's referring, the pasuk is referring to the little small Moshe Rabbeinu inside each and every one of us. That is the Moshe Rabbeinu that we are talking about. We are not talking about the big famous Moshe Rabbeinu that we all know. Yes, for him it's simple, but you know for who else it's simple? For our neshama, for our soul inside us. It's also something very simple and very easy. And this is chapter 18 in Tanya. He speaks about this heritage that we all get, no matter what. If you're born to a Jewish mother, we go according to the mother. You are a Jew, and you have this godly soul inside you that makes things much easier. Makes things very easy. Yes, Yaakov?
Why don't you refer to chapter 2?
The Nefesh Hashanit B'Yisrael. Right. That's more of a basic, place where he speaks about the neshama. True. That's a great chapter to talk about as well. Specifically here, we are talking about, and this is what we're going to find in our parsha. Specifically, we are talking about the neshama, how it can help us to see Judaism as something close. Because that's a question that we started with. How is Judaism close to us? Or how is fearing Hashem close to us? So that's where we bring this part, this chapter 18, where he speaks about this special soul that we have. Yes, he mentions it also chapter 2, and that's where the beginning, where he basically shows us the structure of the human body, of more of the human soul, and especially of the Yid soul, where each and every one of us, we have this neshama, and we also have a nefesh habamit, the animal soul, of course. And that's the two, those are the two souls that we have. So, back to our parsha. After we know this special quality, our parsha talks about something very interesting. And this is the counting of Am Yisrael. The counting of the Jewish people. Hashem tells Moshe and Aaron, listen, I want you to count the Jews. Tell me how many are there. Why does Hashem need to count Am Yisrael? Does he not know the number? Doesn't make sense, right? He knows everything. You know, it's not like sometimes a person, truth is that this is similar. You know, sometimes a person has a nice amount of money saved under the carpet or under the floor, whatever it is, right? And he knows how much he has. He knows he's got whatever it is, 100,000, 70,000, whatever it is, 20,000. And he tells, sometimes he goes there and he counts the money, right? And it gives him a good feeling. This is the reason that Rashi brings down that Hashem counts Am Yisrael because he likes Am Yisrael. The Rebbe used to give out dollars every Sunday, right? He stood for hours giving dollars. He didn't sit, and he wasn't a young man, but he stood there for hours giving dollars. And I'm sure some of the people here have $1 from the Rebbe, or went by the Rebbe, right? So, basically, so back to our subject, back to the story of the counting of Am Yisrael. So Hashem wants to show his affection towards Am Yisrael, and that's why he's counting us. But Hasidus explains a deeper way and a deeper term to the idea of counting Am Yisrael. And what is the proof? Here's a question. Do you have any idea what is the proof that we have a soul, that we have a neshama? There was once a story about, right, because that's the immediate answer. There's no proof. There was once a story about a Russian, we spoke about the Soviets. Here's a story about the Soviet Union, and the teacher once said, there is no God. He told the students there is no God. Why? Because we cannot see it. And what we cannot see, we can't see God. Did anyone see God? No. If you can't see it, that means it's not there. So one of the Jewish students stood up and said, the teacher has no brains. So the teacher said, how can you say such a thing? Well, did anyone ever see the brains of the teacher? So he's got no brains. And it's a story about that, but there's something true about the story as well. That sometimes we don't actually need to see something to know that it's there, right? Yeah. You don't have to actually see it. Sometimes you can, so, you know, some people have feelings about it, which is good. And sometimes you have all kinds of proofs about it. So do you have any idea how can we, if someone says, who says that you have a neshama? What do you guys say? Yes.
When you see somebody passing away who belongs to you, the same person is lying in the bed.
Right. It's a good point.
And then you say, oh, something went away. The life force. The life,
right. So that is something that's common with everyone. Everyone has a certain life to him, right? But I'm talking specifically about a godly soul.
Yeah.
How do we know that we have a godly soul? What is
Hashem blows something into us, but that's maybe the life force. When you go to these higher levels of soul, I cannot.
What's the proof? Okay. Does anyone have any idea of some kind of proof?
We are still here
for
so many years.
Okay, that's a very good point, right? That Am Yisrael,
we are still here after so many years.
As an individual, right? So, as an individual, you would say, okay, people pass away after a certain amount of time, certain amount of years, but take a look at this phenomenon where the Jewish people, even though they've been persecuted throughout thousands of years, they still exist, and not only they still exist, but they actually exist in the same ways. We read the same Torah as Moshe Rabbeinu read. Unbelievable. The same exact Torah, we discuss the same laws. The Talmud is 2,000 years old, and we read the very same Talmud. So, anyway, so that's a good point. There's something Hashem keeping us, Hashem is taking care of us. And anyone else with any other idea of the neshama, of the soul? Any proof to the neshama?
What about the
I think the Tanya has a great illustration about the neshama of the soul as the candle that rises up and continually rises up,
Right.
and then penetrates through all of the 10 different spherot to be able to reach the level of the shell.
Nice. So this is something that's connected to the feeling of the person. That you actually sometimes can feel the neshama. And sometimes people told me, for example, that whenever they walk into Yerushalayim, into Jerusalem, we are lucky that we hear all the time. But sometimes, you know, when you walk into Jerusalem or you go to the Kotel, certain holy places, you get this feeling, this special feeling. And this is connected to our feelings. But I want to tell you that there's also sometimes, many times, where we can actually bring a proof that there's something else here in the story. And this is the fact that Am Yisrael, throughout generations, they did what's called Mesirut Nefesh. People that weren't Torah scholars, they were not high tzaddikim, they did not even know much. They knew one thing, that they are Jewish, and therefore they cannot bow down and worship idols or connect to any other kind of religion. And this is a proof that there's something else there. Because why are you, this rabbi, that he was there and no one knows that you're going to work on Shabbos. And more than that, I'll tell you, many Jews worked on Shabbos in the Soviet Union. Because it was pikuach nefesh, you had no choice. If you would not work, you wouldn't get food, no food, and the person would die. So, nevertheless, certain people said, you know what, I'm prepared to give up everything. No one will remember me, no one will know that I did it for the sake of Hashem. This is Mesirut Nefesh. Young kids, throughout the times of the Inquisition, during the Crusades, they were killed al Kiddush Hashem, just for the sake of being Jewish. And then they gave them the option, you can convert and we'll accept you, they'll be very happy. Sometimes, right.
Also the Goyim.
Sorry?
Also the Goyim.
Also the Goyim?
And Mesirut Nefesh.
Okay, so this is also a good point, and we'll talk about
You
it.
remember Jan Para in Prague?
What is that? That's
The final himself.
right. He was he for the time of the Greeks?
No, it was some 50 years ago against the Russians in Prague. The Russians invaded Czechoslovakia.
Okay.
He went to the central Kikar.
Right.
And he fired.
Very good point. There's a rabbi that wrote an article just about that, and he said, what is the difference between Al-Qaeda and the Al-Qaeda? We all know the Al-Qaeda story. What is the Al-Qaeda story? Where Avram took his son and was prepared to sacrifice him. And he says, we all read this. Every morning during davening we read it, and you know what? There used to be a rabbi, a big admor, that he always read the story, and he used to picture it and imagine the whole story. Before he imagined it, he never used to daven before he finished to imagine it, because that's what gave him the fire and the energy to daven and to connect to Hashem with this inspiring story. So yes, everyone does Mesirut Nefesh, right? There's a big difference, and this is, if we look in the details of the story of Avraham, there are many answers to this question, but one of the answers is, and I think the most full answer, is that Avraham did it without any interest, without promoting any interest. So you gave a very good example. When Russia invaded Czechoslovakia, this person said, you know what, I don't want to live. I want to cause the Russians to go out. I want to cause them to leave. And that's my agenda. I'm promoting this idea. How am I doing it? I cannot do it alive. I'm going to do it with my death. He's got an interest. That is not true sacrifice. That's not Mesirut Nefesh. Mesirut Nefesh is preparing to go like Avram. Who witnessed Avram doing this, sacrificing his son? No one. No one, right? No one. So, Yitzchak, right. Yitzchak was the only one. But he, if he would be sacrificed, if he would actually die, so then no one would know. So we know it because it ended in a good way. And more than that, Avram came on a mission to teach the world about Hashem's existence, right? Who was supposed to continue his mission in the world? Yishmael was way off track. Pere Adam, Yado Bakol, V'yad Kolbo. He was a wild beast. And the one that was supposed to continue the mission is Yitzchak. And Avram is killing his whole agenda, and nobody knows about it. You know, there's another story about Avram, which isn't mentioned in the Torah. It's mentioned in the Midrashim, where Avram destroyed all the idols in his father's shop, and they wanted to burn him alive because of that. They threw him into the bonfire, and he was survived. A great miracle. Why isn't that written in the Torah? Because Avram did it in front of the entire world, in front of Nimrod, the greatest king in that time. So this isn't Mesirut Nefesh. You are promoting your idea. Usually the way people promote their idea is by their existence. Sometimes a person can say, and this happened during the Greeks, they used to worship idols, and some of the scholars there wrote books about the fact that you've got to believe in just in one God, and wasn't a Jewish person, and they killed him. They killed him for that. That's not Mesirut Nefesh. It's great. It's very nice. You know, it's something to appreciate and to admire that this person is prepared to die for his belief, but it is in a way where he promotes his belief and his ideology. The Mesirut Nefesh that we do, and that's why a kid can do it as well. A kid has nothing that he's promoting. It's because of our soul, because of our neshama. So if you want to look for proofs, there are many proofs. And there's other proofs, certain statistics about the Jewish people that you say, you know what, something's got to be different here with the Jews. And we'll talk about it more in the JLI course that's coming up soon, because that's all about the journey of the soul. And it's about the neshama. But just the fact of the Mesirut Nefesh, that's already a story. And in the words of King David, amazing, in Tehillim it says, Va'ani bar velo eda, behemot hayiti imach, va'ani tamid imach. Those are the words of David HaMelech. Reading the Tehillim is amazing because specifically here in this pasuk, David HaMelech says to Hashem, you know what? Va'ani bar velo eda. I have no knowledge and I do not know. I'm like behemot, like an animal. No knowledge, no understanding about your greatness, but va'ani tamid imach. I am always with you. This reminds me also of the great tzaddikim during the beginning years of Hasidut, 200 years ago, 150 years ago, where their greatness and their righteousness did not come out of knowledge, but it came from their soul, their neshama. Rabbi Zusha Manipodi, have you ever heard of Rabbi Zusha? He was one of the students of the Maggid Mimezrich, a great person, and he was very poor, and he was very happy. And two of the other Talmidim of the Maggid wanted to know, how can, you know, in the Gemara it says that a person has to bless Hashem when he has something bad happen to him, in the exact same way that he blesses Hashem when something good happens to him. And what happened is that this is something that many people find very hard to understand. How can I say, Hashem, thank you very much for making me lose $100,000? In the exact same way that I would thank Hashem and bless Hashem for making me win $100,000. So how does that work? The Maggid told his students, I want you to go to my other student, Rabbi Zusha. Go and see how he accepts suffering upon himself. So they went to Rabbi Zusha and they told Rabbi Zusha, listen, the Maggid told us, our rabbi told us that you should explain to us how could we accept and bless Hashem for the sufferings that we have. So Rabbi Zusha turns to them with his torn clothes and with his, he was probably also hungry, and he says, are you sure the Maggid sent to me? Suffering? I don't suffer a minute in my life. How can I teach you this? That's his reply. He didn't even know that he is suffering, that he's missing something. So this is Rabbi Zusha. He wasn't knowledgeable. He wasn't a great Talmid Chacham. And once the story is that one of the rabbis asked him a question in the Rambam because he wanted to test him. The Rambam is considered a very difficult book. You know, if you learn it in a deep way, we just started once again to learn the Rambam, and there's a cycle where we finish it every year. So you can read it and you can understand the basic level, but most of the deepest Talmudic discourses are connected to the Rambam. Books and books of deep understanding. Reb Chaim MiBrisk. If you ever heard of Reb Chaim MiBrisk in the yeshiva world, he's the greatest. There's Reb Isa Zalman Meltzer. He wrote also a book about the Rambam. He lived not far from here. He moved from Europe to Eretz Yisrael before the war, and he lived in Nachlaot. If you go in the streets of Nachlaot, old buildings there, he lived in one of those buildings. I'm not sure exactly where, but I even think that you can find it, and it even says that he lived there. So it's very interesting, and he also wrote about the Rambam. The deepest books are about the Rambam. When it came to Rabbi Zusha, they asked him an answer. And they told him, but I want your answer. I don't want you to ask the Rambam and let the Rambam tell you the answer. I want you to think about it. And Rabbi Zusha replied, Rabbi Zusha said, and what do you care if I hear the answer from the Rambam himself? Wow. He had direct access. You know, when we want to understand something in the Torah, wherever it is, if it's the Chumash itself, the stories themselves, if it's the Talmud, if it's Tanya, if it's Shulchan Aruch, we've got to work very, very hard on understanding. Imagine you can knock on the door of the person that wrote it and, please, Rabbi, explain to me what you wrote over here. I don't understand this text. That was the level of holiness and Kedusha that Rabbi Zusha has. And this is a great lesson to us because, you know, sometimes we think that holiness and connection to Hashem and greatness and being righteous is connected to knowledge. And sometimes we say, you know what, can I compare myself to the big rabbis that wrote these Sfarim? So where am I in the picture? How is Judaism close to me if I'm not that knowledgeable? And I'll never be, because these are rabbis that were, first of all, they were genius. They were smart. So that's first of all. And second of all, they knew much better than me. They had much more experience. Even today in the yeshiva world, we cannot compare the yeshiva guys around today to the ones that lived 50 years ago. I'm not talking about 100, 200, 300 years ago. Great, great Talmidei Chachamim. This is the point of the Tanya. Connecting to Hashem doesn't always have to do with knowledge. Doesn't always have to do with how much I know and how clever I am. I've got this soul, I've got this little Moshe Rabbeinu inside me that guides me. That's why simple people were prepared to sacrifice themselves. That's why young children were prepared to do the same thing. So it's not always about the knowledge, it's about the connection to Hashem. And Rabbi Zusha is just one example of a righteous person that connected to Hashem in a true manner, in a true way. So that's the Tanya, and let's go back to the counting in our parasha. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron count Am Yisrael. And the question is, why did they count it? So, you know,
it was not the first counting.
And it wasn't the first counting.
They came from Egypt, and that short time, what you need, 2, 3 counting?
Exactly, and more than, and Hashem already knows the number. What is the point of counting?
No, counting is for us, but what's the message, you know?
Hashem
even not appreciate the money
right.
hidden under the carpet and all that. Even
100%.
Something is missing on
100%.
our understanding.
Right. And also, you're right, they counted on the first, they counted Am Yisrael 3 times. They counted them. Yeah, they counted them. This we're talking about here. Before they left Egypt, and then this was a year later.
A year later?
A year later, they counted them again. What really changed? And you know, the numbers are pretty similar. Pretty similar numbers, if not exactly the same. The truth is that when you count someone, when you count a yid, you're basically counting his neshama. You're counting his soul. And when you count the soul, what is the word sofrim? Lispor. Lispor is connected also to the word sapir. Sapir, about sapphire, right? There's the gemstone called sapphire. Very precious stone. And when we count, Hashem, what he basically does when he counts us is he considers us. You know, when you count someone, I'm counting on you. I'm counting you for the minyan. I need 10 people for the minyan. Without you, I can't say a Kaddish. I'm counting on you. Right?
Yeah,
that's the powerful idea of counting, where we enlighten this person, where we basically show how important he is. When Hashem counts us, he's giving us energy, he's giving us power. He's saying, you are important. I need you. I want you here in this world. It's not just for the knowledge of the amount of the number, just one moment. Not for the knowledge just of the number. Yes, the number is great. Hashem knows the number. And he just counted us a year before. But Hashem is starting with a new counting. Yes, sure.
Okay, so like when we have a minyan here, it's always good to have many people, even more than 10.
You're right.
Right?
Definitely.
We always like that. But if we have exactly 10, then each person counts. How would I say this? They're actually, each person is equally important as if there's more. But
exactly.
If you have only 10, then each person is, how would I say this? Very important. More than like if, because basically like if someone leaves, then there's no minyan.
Then there's no minyan at all.
That's
right?
what I'm basically saying. So
you're saying that if you 10, they're more important than 15?
Yeah, because like I don't want to say it's hard for me to explain, but
I'll give you an example.
You know what I mean?
I understand what you
mean.
Yeah. Give you an example. There was once a boat, right? That was a cruise. It was on the sea, and suddenly the captain hears drilling. He hears drilling from one of the rooms, and he looks around, knocks on the doors, and he sees this person drilling a hole in the wall in the ship. And he tells him, "What is this? What are you doing?" So he says, "No, this is my room. I rented the room. I can do whatever I want to do." So sometimes we're all dependent on one person, right? So no one can say, "You know what? I'm excluding myself." Right? Technically, for the minyan, you need just 10 people. And you know what? If there's another 10, you can tell them, "We don't really need you. With 10, you're good enough." But each individual creates those 10 or 20. Or, you know, they always say, "Asiri le minyan, asiri le minyan." I'm looking for the 10th. We have the sign. I need the 10th person for the minyan. That's what I'm looking for, the 10th person. Because the 10th is the one that enables you to say the Kaddish. But in a certain sense, each person is a 10th. Because without that person, you won't be able to say the Kaddish. Yes?
Yeah, exactly what you say. By 10 are more important than 15. When the 10 is running out, you cannot even pray the Kaddish anymore. When you're 15, you still a chance. Even 5 are running out, you have a million, you can pray the Kaddish.
Right.
Maybe
Wait, if you have 5, you're saying?
Huh?
15.
15.
15 and 5 can leave.
Oh, okay, fine.
Right.
We heard yesterday in Shiur,
Yes.
it's about Yaakov at his bed, dying bed, with his 12 children around him.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time all of Am Yisrael is together. And these 12, whose Yaakov himself, which represent the whole of Am Yisrael, have the number 13.
13.
Number 13 is Echad. The gematria of Echad, of 13, is Echad.
Right. The unity of Am Yisrael, and that's why it says that. That's why it says that that Achdut Israel, by the way, we're coming up to Shavuot. Shavuot is all about the unity of Am Yisrael, because that's another place where we Ish Echad B'lev Echad, right? Everyone were so united because we are receiving the Torah. There is a tradition also to have the Shabbos before Shavuot, to have like a community meal, something like that, on the Shabbos before, because that represents the unity of Am Yisrael.
Can you go back to the question, what's the proof for the soul?
Yes.
So now we have a proof for a life force, but we learned with the rabbis there are many different levels of souls. And even Israel has a very special soul as a nation, and each nation has a soul. That's a whole concept.
So the other nations, right? The other nations have a sar, what's called a It's a whole.
Minister, yeah.
They have a minister. That's what we call it. Am Yisrael has a godly soul. That's the idea. It's a godly soul that has 5 levels, and each level is connected to a different power that we have. For example, there's nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida, and sometimes in life, first of all, we all have the 5 senses. We all have them. Only 3 of them enter the body. There are 2 that stay up. Chaya, yechida, 2 levels of the neshama that they stay up, and they only come down in very special occasions. Yechida is singular. The word translation for yechida is yechid, single, one, united, and that part of the neshama comes down to the body when a person does mesirut nefesh, and also during Yom Kippur. We say at the end of Ne'ilah, we say Shema Yisrael. Yom Kippur is the whole day of Yom Kippur is connected to the neshama, and Ne'ilah, the last davening, which is the highest davening, the holiest davening, is connected to the highest part of the neshama, Yechida. And when we recite and we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, we have in mind that we would be prepared if Hashem would challenge us. We would be prepared to sacrifice ourselves. That is the Ne'ilah. So there are 5 souls, 5 parts to the soul. And usually what's inside us is only the 3 levels of nefesh, ruach, neshama. And also then, some people have a higher neshama than others. What does that mean? We all have the same neshama, but the neshama goes through a certain transformation when it comes down to the world, and it has to go through a whole journey. And in that case, the neshama is affected, you know. It's like the example that I saw a few times is that it's like flying direct or flying with a stopover, right? You stop over, you might be 10 hours in the airport, you've got to leave, so you are exposed to a new culture, a different weather, you know, in times of pandemics and that, you might be exposed to a virus that's in that place or whatever it is, and then there's flying directly. That's why tzaddikim, righteous people, right? The special tzaddikim, they take a flight that is direct. No stopovers, first class and direct. They enter straight to this world, and that's why they are holier in a certain way.
So they don't have any averot. They don't have
exactly. They don't have any mistakes, any averot. This is all connected to the course that we're starting. This is the JLI course. We're starting it this coming up Sunday. It's going to be 6 Sundays, 6 lessons at 7:30 every evening. Here, we're going to do it over here, and it's open for men and women, and you can all sign up with me. It costs 250 shekel. This is including a textbook, this is including diplomas, we use PowerPoints, we use videos.
It's in Hebrew and English?
This is going to be in English, and if anyone needs a discount with the payment, etc., so as members of the Bet Midrash, you can contact me and we'll arrange a special price. And yeah, that's it. That's basically the story of the neshama. This is this coming up Sunday. I'm going to send you all a video of the neshama, which is basically a promotion.
So is it
I just lost battery, but I'm going to send you when I get battery.
I just have a quick question.
Yes. you.